All right, hello everyone. This is Jen Mickey Lamb here, and this is another Mickey Paints class. I am re-recording part one of the Group of Seven painting from the Take It Back in Time series because of some technical difficulties. So here it goes. Hope that everyone's been well, and if this is your first time joining in one of my classes, these are virtual paint classes, and all you will need for this class is a pencil, a surface to paint on. So I'm going to actually be painting on just a Bristol board, a white Bristol board piece of paper, but the original was on a canvas that was uh, 10 by 12 inches, I believe. But we're just going to jump right in. All right, so if this is your first time taking the class, like I said, these are all of the things that you will need. Feel free, since this is on YouTube, you can pause it at the screen and go and grab it if you need to. But this is week 4, so we have been through 3 weeks so far of historical painters. The first one was Picasso, and then we went over to Monet's Water Lilies. That was a lot of fun. And then there was also Van Gogh's Starry Night, which is super popular. You can find the rest of them on my channel. And this week we're going to be jumping into the group of 7. So a little bit about myself before we start. If it is your first time meeting me, hi, welcome. I am actually a full-time teacher during the day. I did not study art professionally, but I have been painting for 10 years now, and I am self-taught. I am very passionate about education, but the reason why I love running these classes is really just to spread creativity. And so I hope that you enjoy the rest of my classes. A little bit about the group of 7. We're going to watch a short video so that you can get a bit of background. I'm actually going to just attach this in the bio, just in case you can't hear it, but let's keep going. The painting today that we are going to be working on is actually by Lawren Harris. So he is one of the members of the group of 7. A little kind of briefing. They are basically 7 artists that are from Canada, and they really opened up the path and paved way for Canadian artists because they focused a lot on Canadian landscapes. And it's a bit of a modern types of paintings where they weren't all realistic, but an interesting thing is that Lawren Harris himself, and along with some other group of 7 painters, never signed their paintings because they really wanted you to interpret it in your own way, whether it was the time it was painted or who it might have been painted by. So it's a bit mysterious there. But Lawren Harris provided the stimulus for the group of 7. During the 1920s, Harris's work became more abstract and simplified, especially his landscapes of the Canadian North and Arctic. So, like I said, he stopped signing his work so that people can judge their work on their own merit and not by the artists or when they were painted. And this is the painting we're working on. It is called Lakehouse, and it's at Coldwell, Lake Superior. Okay, let's get right into it. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And we're going to jump right in. Okay, so before we start, like I said, a nice drink. We're just going to be outlining and sketching everything in the painting. So you're working with a rectangular surface. I'm going to jump right first into the top right corner. So if you take a look at the original, we're going to start first with the clouds in the sky, and then we're going to sketch the hills, the bushes over here, the house, and then we have the water and the shoreline. Okay, so first, there's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clouds. So the first line, you want to start with a couple of waves there. And if I were to measure it, this is about 1/5 of the painting, so you don't want to take up too much room. And then we'll start to work our way down. I'm going to kind of mark off right here. About 1/3, so you don't want to pass this. You don't want to pass 1/3 of the painting. I'll outline it later in marker just so that you can see it a bit clearer. But using that as a reference, you want to draw your second cloud. And I'd say it's about maybe about 3 centimeters thick. It doesn't have to follow the exact shape of the first one. You can kind of play around with it a bit. Okay, so I have 2 layers of clouds so far. There's going to be a hill that comes in here later. But I'm actually going to do the furthest cloud right now, just so that we have a nice guide. Let me darken that for you guys. Okay. And I'm going to go all the way now to the top left corner, just so that we can zone in and work with the space. This cloud here will actually meet us about halfway. So let's make a big, let's say about like just 2 waves, and it's going to meet us about halfway. Now we can use the space to gauge the remaining clouds. So I have 1, 2. These ones are a bit bigger, so I'm just going to do 1 right in the middle. Just like that. So we have 4 lines, wavy lines across the sky so far. And we have 1 more cloud that's kind of hiding underneath this second last one here. Okay. I'll give you guys a bit of time to do that. You can take a look at the reference. You can always Google and search up Lakehouse by Lawren. This is a super fun painting. Okay, so now that we have done the clouds, we will jump into, let's actually do the house in the bushes first, because the remaining space with the hill is a lot more straightforward. All right. Okay, so before we do the house, I'm going to draw across the bottom of the canvas where my land will be. So it is a bit thicker. I'd say it's about 1/3 of the painting. And I'm going to go all the way across. And the house sits on a tiny bit of a hill, so you can level it up here a little bit. Again, some rules when it comes to my live classes, always to be flexible, especially with these paintings, because our purpose here is not to completely mimic and be exactly like the original artist, but put your own twist onto it. Okay, so now that we have the land there, we now use the space to gauge where the house will go. And the house will kind of dip into the clouds a little bit, but it is about 1/3 of the painting. So if you're a photographer, I forgot the rule of thirds, right? So the house is about 1/3 of the painting. I'm just going to sketch like a really long triangle here, and then I'm going to meet it down here. So let me quickly just sketch it in here for you guys, and then I'll show you. My original canvas was a bit longer, so the size may be distorted a bit. I really loved, I'm going to attach in the bio as well, the documentary I watched of the group of 7. So amazing to see these photographers go on a bit of like a scavenger hunt where they found the original places that some of these paintings were made, and then take a picture of it. Okay, cool. We have the house there. Again, we're just sketching. It doesn't have to be perfect. We have the house, about a third. So far we have the clouds, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I went across to do our horizon line, or our shoreline per se. And now I have my house. Then the house here, we have these window-like shapes. It's about like 3 or 4, kind of like a comb here. Okay. Hope you can all see it nice and clearly. Okay. And right in front we have this tiny porch. Right. Now, once you have your clouds and your house, let's go in and draw these bushes over here. So we have the smaller bushes up in the front. So I have like 1 here, and I have another 1, 2, more cone. And then I have 3 little bushes, 1, 2, and 3. Sketching is quite simple as long as you have the reference. And then I have another hill right behind those 3. Another one right beside the house. Another one just like that. So we're just layering on those bushes. Behind these bushes, or these hills, we have these dark mountains. And this mountain is definitely taller than the house. So we're going to go up here, going to cut into and meet the first cloud over there. So this is all going to be black there. And we have another hill like that. And one that's right beside it. So hope that doesn't confuse you too much. I just wanted to show you that it's all going to be filled in. I'm going to erase those cloud lines just to not confuse us. The nice thing about sketching is that it takes out a lot of anxiety as you're painting, because you already have a lot of the painting already planned out. Definitely different recording without a live class. Part 2 will have the live class. Okay. Let's straighten it up a little bit. A lot of back and forth. Never perfect the first time. It's supposed to be nice and relaxing, so take your time, sketch it. The painting part will be a lot of fun. All right, once we have those bushes done, I'm going to do this little, I don't know if it's like a cabin that's right by the water, but it is perfectly halfway between that space on the left side of the canvas and the porch. Okay, so right in the middle, I have another little house. You can imagine if there's like a little rectangle, basically. You can see a rectangle. You're to break it up with a triangle on top of half of that rectangle. It's interesting as you like start to paint more, for those that are getting into painting after a long time. A lot of what sketching is really just breaking it down into simpler shapes in your head. That's where the interpretation and that problem solving comes in. what I love most about painting. Awesome. Once you have that house, let's go straight into those two big hills behind that house there. My scaling is could be a bit better. I'm going to go in and I have to fix this cloud because as you can see in the original, my hill is taller than my house and it's almost touching the cloud. But just so that it makes a bit more sense for those that are connecting it to my second part, I'm just going to move that cloud up a tiny bit. That way my hill right behind the house can go right here all the way to the side. And then we have a little bit here. And think of it like a roller coaster, goes up and then all the way down. Okay. This is what we have so far. Feel free to pause it on the screen and sketch if you need to. I'm going to go into the water and the shore. This is where it gets a little bit more abstract because it's not as clear, the shapes. But I'm going to divide the space I have right now in half. So this is where the shoreline starts. So right underneath the porch, engage. I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. Kind of looks like a bear paw. This is like a piece of land. I guess the way Lawren Harris saw things, especially in his Arctic and Northern Canadian paintings, it was all just shapes, similar to Picasso, for those that joined me for that class. So we have that bear paw right here. Now I'm going to bring that all the way around, kind of like a finger. And we have another finger. Can also look like something else. Know you're thinking it. Middle plate. And the third one. 1, 2, 3. That's kind of a basic shape of the stand. We're going to add in the shading after, right? And now for the water, it's super simple. We're using this like rectangular space here, but I'm going to start at my bottom left corner. My bottom left corner, and I'm going to make a little wave pointing towards that middle split. Okay. And now using that as a guide, I'm going to do 2 more underneath. 1, 2, and 3 on top. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. And there we have our sketch. I'm going to face this a bit closer. Again, if you need to pause, a good place to pause it right here before moving on. There we go. It's hard to straighten my painting, my drawing. And we'll keep going now. All right, so the first part I'm going to be painting is the gray clouds up in the corner there. And the cool thing about this painting is that it is a series of the same steps. Okay, so we're always going to do the darker color, and then we're going to do the lighter color, and then the even lighter shade, the lightest shade. You can see that type of pattern between the hills, with the dark, light, and lighter. Same with the sky. So it's going to be really fun to just really mix and play around with the different shades in that color. While you may be finishing your sketch, I'm going to get my paint ready by mixing a dark gray color with my paintbrush. These are just very basic brushes from Michaels. I'm going to be releasing some product recommendations soon. Stay tuned for that. I have my plate of paint where I'm going to take a little bit of black and tiny bit of white. I'm going to make a darker gray color. So it's close to black, I would say, but not too dark. So we have a dark gray shade. This is the color that I have. And I'm going to go right into the top corner there and swoop back and forth. So I'm flipping along the flat side of my paintbrush. I want that smooth kind of texture. You may need water if your brush is getting a little dry. And I forgot to mention this, but I'm using acrylic paint. You can be using, I had a student during this class use markers, pencil crayons. While I have this shade on my brush, I'm going to go into the second cloud as well. And we're just going to paint the top layer. Kind of feels like I'm literally tracing and outlining that. Better to go a bit further in because we're going to use the lighter shade to go over that and blend it after. Anyways. Okay. Ayan. Pa? What? Kung nang-record niya, kung nang-tawag niya. So once we're done that, we're going to hop onto the third cloud. I need to mix a little bit more of that dark gray color. Again, we're just getting at the top. We're going to do the same for the rest of the clouds. I'm just going to do the top layer. That little top there, and then I have the bigger cloud. We're just going to go in and clean it up a little bit. Perfect. And as you're finishing that off, I'm going to start mixing in a little bit more white and actually a tad of blue into my gray. It's going to give it a very cool bluish gray color. It's really pretty. Sort of a reflection of the sky. So I've added white and a tiny bit of blue to the current gray that I have. And you guessed it, we're going to go in with this lighter gray and go right underneath that dark gray that we have so far. And I'll show you how to blend it after this. So I have my lighter gray. And I'm starting actually underneath, closer to the white layer of my dark gray. And I'm going to move up. So as you're moving up towards that dark gray, you're lightly blending it in. So loosen up that pressure on your wrist so that it blends in gradually. I'm just brushing lightly over that dark gray. So you don't need a lot of paint. We'll just have one final layer of that really, really light gray. Same thing, we're gonna go right underneath. One way for you to blend it is actually to take a dry brush, a clean dry brush. Just clean and dry it off. So if you actually take a dry, clean brush, you can use it to blend it in just by going over that middle section between the two colors to blend it in. So if you have a clean dry brush, it can be slightly wet as well. You can use it to blend it in between. Perfect. And I'm going to go into my third cloud. Going in between those hills. You can have your dry brush handy and then kind of just blend right after. My paint is drying pretty quickly because I have a primer mixed in there, like a gesso that I used for my white paint. I'm going to use a little bit of water just to blend in between as well. Just right, going right over it in the middle, right? Getting closer to the house. It's getting a bit rough. But my last gray color is where I can really start to clean up the lines because it's closing it off. Keep going with that second shade of gray. Can you notice that bluish shade in the gray there? Adds like a little pop to it that I really like. You know what brush you're using? You might want to use like a smaller brush to just clean up those little spots in between. Third one. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, so we have those two shades of gray so far, each of those clouds. You can already see it coming together, especially when it's side by side with the demo. But keep going with that. Hope you can still hear me okay. Weird thing about recording is that I don't know if you can hear me because I'm relying on.
That should be clearer. There we go. Okay. So once you have that second layer in, we're going to mix a tiny bit more white. To finish off the rest of the cloud. So we're filling in the remaining space in the cloud with that light gray. I just realized that my mic was not connected. So earlier, if you heard me talking to my dad, I was just telling him that I'm recording in Vietnamese. So I'm going along right up to the line. And by this time, you probably have a better hang of the blending. Just filling in that remaining space. And I'm going to use a bit of white after just to add that highlight. What I really like about this painting and a lot of the group of 7 paintings is that it seems very strategic and logical the way that they painted it, especially with the different shades. Okay, and on to my third. So again, if you're blending, you can either do that light brush that I'm doing right now with the same brush, or you can use a second brush that is clean to help you blend. Just take your time. They say that the difference between a professional painter or an artist and an amateur artist sometimes is really the time that you take. I even learned a lot about myself hearing that quote from someone, because sometimes we just need to give ourselves a bit more time to polish a piece of work. Because if we keep adding on to it, it makes such a huge difference, right? I just went in to darken it up a little bit because I went over the dark layer earlier, but we'll just keep going now. And my last layer. Can you use this time? You can see the blending coming together. So take your time with this part, because once you have a hang of the blending here, you're going to be using the same technique to blend throughout the painting. So if you need a bit more time here, just to perfect a little bit and get a hang of the blending, take as much time as you need. So I'm just going in underneath, cleaning up those spaces, filling in any spots I may have missed. Okay. As you're finishing that off, I'm going to mix an even lighter gray. So at this point, you've already filled in all of your clouds, but I'm going to use this white close to gray color to highlight. If you take a look, the difference between these two is literally just that last highlighted gray color. So I'm going to go in and brighten it up a bit. We're brightening up the bottom. I would say for this part, you don't need to blend it. You want it a bit more concrete, the lines. So you're just going to go in with a white, close to white shade of gray. And we are just tracing those clouds. Beautiful thing about painting is that, especially when you're painting nature, and then you see nature afterwards, you start to picture it and see it in a different way. It's really what I love about art. It gives you a different perspective of the world around you. It makes you slow down and appreciate it. Start to notice all the textures and the colors in the sky when the sun is setting. The trick here with this part is that when you are outlining, I'll do it as an example here, but you want it to be a thicker line in the middle, and then as you're getting to the bottom corners, it starts to thin out. So I'll show you the original. But if you take a look, you see the white outline here, how it starts to slowly, gradually get smaller and disappear as it gets towards the end. Instead of doing like a full 1 centimeter thick line, it won't make a big difference, but that's a slight detail you can go in. So if I were to go over it again, I'm going to slowly create that thinner, it gives it more of a shape in the clouds, I would say, if you had that thin tip at the end. You can simply, there we go. All right. We're just finishing off the clouds at this point before we jump into the blue sky. I have no sky here. I have a very big sky here. So I apologize for the scaling right now. It might make more sense actually with my part 2 because I also used the same size paper for that. Just take some time for the gray. I'm gonna jump into my blue part, so I'm gonna clean off my paintbrush and get ready for the blue. Get ready for the blue. So for my blue, I am mixing a tiny bit of black into it. So I'm going to start with that darker shade of blue, and whatever space you have for the sky, it might be bigger, smaller than mine. As you can see, I have a lot of sky over here, and it's not as prominent over here, but you still want it to blend and show the highlights. So I'm going to fill in this tiny space here with the blue. This is just with a straight sky blue color, and then I'm going to be adding black after just to darken, but let's just fill in the outer space of the sky, the window of sky. We're gonna have like that lighter color in the middle. So whatever blue it is you're using, just use either black or white to darken and brighten. Okay. Once you have filled that part in, I'm going to add a tiny bit of black now. Be careful with this because black is really strong color. You don't want to make it look too dark, but just enough to see a difference. So mine is turning into a bit of like a navy blue color. And I'm going to use this to go over the same part that I've done already. I'm going to go over it. The reason why I did that blue layer underneath was to create more of a solid color with my blue. So I'm just going over it with the added black shade, navy blue. Depending on what paint you use too. I had someone ask me, what do you do if your paint is a little bit transparent? One thing you can do is obviously just paint a second layer. I compare it to nail polish for women or men, where you sometimes need to paint on a second layer. But there's also something called gesso. So if you search up Gesso, it is a sort of a primer. I've only seen it come in like the white color, but when you add it to your paint, it makes it more opaque, basically. So I've done the outside dark blue shade. And now I'm going to mix a bit of the white, and all you're going to do is fill in that middle space with the lighter shade of blue. So mix white into the color you have so far, and I'm going to just fill in that middle part. And similar to the clouds, you're going to blend it in. A little bit of white again. I'm actually just going to blend it in right from the edge. So earlier I had like that border, right? But once you have the lighter blue, feel free to come right at the edge of your painting and blend it in to that dark blue. Just drag it in. Drag, drag, drag. You should have a nice blended window of blue. Pretty fun so far, huh? I hope it's not just me having fun. I really love the blending idea because it creates such light. And that's what a lot of the group of 7 did, was playing around with light and the shadows of nature. And so wherever you see that the lighter tone, that's probably where the light is hitting. So I'm going to ask you a question. Where do you think the light is hitting from when you take a look at this painting? Yep. So it is the top left corner, right? So this is where the light is coming from. You can even see on the hill, which we're going to go into next, that the lighter green is on the left side, even throughout the bushes and the rocks. And next we're going to have the hill. All right, so nice thing about blue is that you don't always have to clean your brush off, because in order to make green, the nice thing about green is that when you have blue on the brush, all you need to do is add yellow. So I'm going to add my yellow and mix myself a nice green, forest green color, I would say. It's a nice forest green color. So for the hill, I'm actually going to do my mid section of the hill first with my base color of green, and then I'm going to add black to it to darken and white to it to brighten. So I'm going to go in with my green color, my midsection. Going around that shed. So I fill in that midsection there. But same idea. Feel free to do your own sequence when it comes to the hill as well, because now that you know how to brighten and darken a color, you could be doing the dark first and then going into the midsection and then the white, which makes a lot of sense because all you're doing is adding a bit of white every time. So I'm just going to show you a different kind of sequence to doing it. So I did the middle, the base green color first this time, and now I'm going to leave a bit on the side, untouched, but add a little bit of black to half of my green. Definitely don't have enough, so I'm going to have to mix a little bit more to make closer to like an evergreen color. Very dark shade of green just by adding that black. See my dark evergreen coming in. All the way. Into the middle of the green. You want to follow that shape, so make sure that even within your dark green, if you take a look a bit closer, it's getting a bit darker now, but you want to follow that round shape, similar to how we did it with the clouds. We were following the waves, right? There you go. And you're going to do the same thing for that little hill in the back here, so you have the darker green at the bottom. And then depending on what green you've mixed, I forgot to mention this earlier, but if you want it closer to like a warm color, a warmer green color, like a lime green color, then you're going to add a bit more yellow to it. If it's a bit towards the turquoise side, then it's a bit more blue. Right, so right now I just have the darker shade, the green on both hills, and the middle green shade. And then all we gotta do for the last part is Mix white. I'm gonna lighten up that green. And we're gonna highlight the hill with our really light green color. Like I said earlier, similar to the cloud, when you're highlighting it, filling it in, blending it right now, keep in mind that you want it to gradually get thinner. Towards the side. So there's more emphasis on that light on top. Right. Filling in that last layer of green over here as well. So we're just cleaning up those hills. If you need to take a little bit of a break, it's nice to kind of stand up and take a look at your painting from afar, because when you're too close, you can miss things as well. You can also appreciate it from further away, especially the blending. So let me put it a little bit closer for you all to see. But you see how you have the light, and it's beautifully transitioning as it gets darker for both the clouds, the sky, and the hill. I'm going to give you all a couple more minutes for that part. And for part 2, it will be in a separate video. But I hope that you are all okay so far. I'm not used to recording YouTube videos versus hearing your feedback live, but I will see you all in part 2.